Hello and good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever and whenever you are. This is Into the Back Archive, and it's about to get hot, because we're talking about Inferno, the John Pertwee story, 7 parts of pure flaming lava. And
Getting a
Owen
little bit
Craft.
hot under the colour.
Oh, a little bit
hot under the collar.
It's a spicy podcast.
We're going up that Nando's chart right for top.
This is obviously the prelude to the fan fiction we've been writing for months about Third Doctor, Lethbridge Stewart, and Liz go to Nando's.
I haven't, James.
What
do you
need
think? To tell us something here?
Well, I think the preeminent question is, what would the Doctor make of a Nando's?
I think the preeminent question is, why have you been thinking about this for 6 months? We haven't even been watching this season for 6 months.
I'd like to think ahead. Look, it's not like look, Hugh at the moment needs some ideas, right? You got to try anything. Yeah, we're getting beep the meep in. You know, we really are scraping. We could do Nando's.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
So how do you sum this episode up? Because it's got a lot going on and simultaneously not much going on.
Wasted potential.
Yes, that's
I think
best two
would
words.
be my words. Would be my 2 words. Right, before we get into this, I want to discuss something with you, which I think you might disagree with me on or not.
Okay.
Right, let me just set this up. This episode is overly bloated and too long. Now, I've got a way we can solve this and shrink the episode count down. The bizarre green goo which turns people into monsters, remove that, take off 3 episodes. We've actually got quite an interesting concept, and something which doesn't drag on for so long. Those monster things do nothing for this story, but
Correct.
drag it on.
The monster thing. What you've got in this episode is a bunch of cool ideas were thrown at the wall, and they're all quite cool ideas on their own. Like, I understand why they ran with all of them. Like, they make sense in isolation. But they've tried to pack them all in at once, and you get this really disjointed story that doesn't feel like it. And I think that's why Wasted Potential feels so accurate. It doesn't feel like it actually captures what the point of it all was.
I feel like they go into... I think the best stuff of it is the alternative timeline stuff.
Yes.
But they spend too long farting around with these bizarre werewolf-like thingies.
Yep.
And so they don't go into it fast enough. And then we kind of just... Then we spend the last episode in the alternative universe still fannying around with bizarre werewolf thingies. And then we get to the last actual episode, we resolve the story. Werewolf things are never work. We never discuss where they come from, why they're there, how they're there, or what their future will be. We just kind of go...
It's just sort of, that happened. It is accepted and not questioned. It's kind of, they're werewolves now. What of it? Well, get the fire extinguishers out.
Yeah.
Also, fire extinguisher, best weapon in this entire episode. It's nice to see the fire extinguisher get some much needed love, I think.
You say that. When I was watching this, I was legitimately noticing all of the fire extinguishers around the set, thinking, they're going a little bit over the top here with fire safety, aren't they?
Yes, the people drilling into molten lava are going over the top with fire safety. That's your concern.
And then suddenly it all becomes... We work out why. Because that's the main weapon.
It's Chekhov's fire hydrant. If you place a fire hydrant in the office, you have to use it eventually. This episode has a lot of things going on. What I will say as well, because I know we're doing end of season what happened soon, because this is the last one of this series. There are a lot of contenders for best death in this one. If you don't pick one from Inferno for best death, there is a good 4 or 5
and best scream as well.
Oh,
and
God, I know the scream you're referring to. Is it the one where he falls off the top?
Yes.
That does a cartwheel.
Note my track record here. I will forget that by our recording probably next week.
I've got a note of it in my head. I remember watching it, just duly note that down for later.
Yeah, that there was perfect.
That's a special. If you've seen it, you probably know what we're talking about. And of course, if you haven't listened to one of these before, spoilers ahead beyond this point.
I mean, we've already pretty much spoiled it.
Yeah, spoiled almost the entire thing, but spoilers, more spoilers are coming.
We should just have a spoiler alert at the end of the episode.
So what we should do is...
Spoiler alert, guys. Spoiler alert, guys. What was the score out of 10? Thanks very much for listening in for Black Archive. Hope you enjoyed. Please remember to subscribe.
Well, I think we should... when you go on Twitter and someone always does the spoiler post, they go, I don't know, Stranger Things 4, spoilers. And then they do 5 dots as if that possibly shadows the spoiler and you can see it right there.
Right. So we're on the topic of spoilers. I just want to quickly discuss something which 2 things about spoilers which breaks me completely.
Is this the question of, did Doctor Who invent spoilers?
No. Number 1. I don't care about spoilers, and I never seem to get spoiled by anything. So I'm assuming which me not caring means I just don't notice the spoilers or care enough to read them. So we should just not care about spoilers. Number 2, I can't watch anything without spoiling it for myself by looking ahead of what happens in the episode synopsis. I am broken.
But that's your fault. So you need to understand that.
Oh, yeah. I know. I'm pretty aware that's my fault. I'm just saying I'm weird, and I don't understand why.
I think the good news, listeners, is that this is not our marketing to move us into a therapy podcast yet. But I don't know how you fix that. I guess the only thing you could do is you'd have to put on the episode, then someone would have to take your phone away and throw it in the corner of the room. Yeah.
Because I'm not joking. So this is actually... I am just going to put it to say spoiler here in case you haven't watched it, even though this will come out in a few months' time. I've finally gotten around to watching Heartstopper.
Yeah, which I've heard is very good. I've not seen it, but I've heard it's very good.
It's very good. I had to research something about that on episode 2 to make sure it would actually happen at the end. Because I'm like going, this annoying me. I need to know if this happens at the end. But I think I know why. Right? I can remember. So this gets back to when I was doing teacher training, because I did teacher training last year.
Is this just you just explaining your appetite for control?
No. Dyslexia.
Ah.
When dyslexic people, for whatever reason, have the urge to jump down, sort of like when they're reading, they will often sort of like want to know how that page finishes, so they just jump down to the end automatically. I think it's something to do with that.
Yeah. Is that because, and forgive me, this is a stupid question, because I don't live with dyslexia and I don't know what it's like. When you scroll down to the bottom of the paragraph, is that to get an idea of where it's going, to give you an idea of what the words might be in the middle?
Yes, but it often means you then miss the middle and then you don't really know what's going on.
All right. Well, it's an attempt. It's an attempt. At least it gives you an emotional context.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. I always thought, because sometimes, I don't know, maybe you're watching a movie and you want to... One of the things I do that I really shouldn't is, if I watch a movie I've maybe already seen but maybe not had for a while, I've maybe watched it 6 or 7 years ago, I might get my phone and just check if it's this really happened. Wow, that happened. I didn't remember that, or something like that. I might do that. Or yeah, but rewatches are good. Yeah. Away from spoilers, characters.
Should we talk about some characters in this?
I think we should talk about some characters. There's a few side characters worth mentioning as well. I think quite a few in this episode. Who is the one you want to start with? Especially because we have duplicates of 2 of our main ones, so that's going to take some time to explain.
Should we start off with the one which isn't a duplicate first, then?
Mr. John Pertwee, the Third Doctor?
Yes.
What a strange episode this man has.
I still like being with him. I enjoy his company.
Although I have to say, the way they wrote Pertwee in this episode of Times was very Hartnell-esque, I thought. There was a lot more of... He was more prepared, I think, than we've seen him in a long time to abandon things. Right at the end, where he's just I've got the TARDIS working, I'm off. See ya, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, this episode we were saying which this episode has got a lot of good contenders for best scream, best death. It's also got a lot of good contenders for worst thing the Doctor did.
Pretty much all of them, yeah. Because his entire drive in this episode is effectively... So to give a brief context to the plot, there's a driller going on. They're trying to penetrate the Earth's crust, and this needs a nuclear reactor to power it. The Doctor, by being an expert, has been allowed to use a bit of it to try and kickstart this working, getting the TARDIS working again. And that's his whole drive throughout the episode. It doesn't really matter what happens at the plant. He's just concerned with having the power on so that he can try and get the TARDIS to work so that he can get out.
He also cares about majorly pissing off the guy who's in charge, which I just enjoy.
Yes, he is incredibly sarcastic towards him, and it's one of my favourite parts of this episode. He's got to be... Oh, what's it? Stallman? Spallman? I can't remember which one it was. Stallman.
Something along those lines, yeah.
Yeah, but that, charge of the plant.
Yeah.
I can't think of a character who's had more verbal abuse lobbed at him and both as much verbal abuse come back from him.
Yes. I think the Doctor in this one here was good. We're getting to the action route of the Doctor, but we're still sticking with the Doctor being the knowledgeable one as well as being the action man.
Yes, and I quite like the fact he was doing more unlikable things. I don't know, I've always found that adds more complexity to the Doctor character. I think you can get a lot of Doctors, certainly in modern Who, and particularly Jodie. I think it's one of the problems that Jodie has, is that you never really see Jodie do anything wrong. Like, she's always very idealistic, and she does the right thing all the time. The fact is, normal people don't do the right thing all the time. No bad person is all bad. No good person is all good. That. And sometimes I think we forget that. It's nice to see occasionally him have a bit of a bad step, but find his way to the good in the end.
Yeah. It was definitely a good episode on his side.
He has to carry a lot of it because of the duplicates.
Shall we go on to the final episode for this person, Liz Shaw? We don't see her again.
Yeah, we never see Liz again. And there's no real tease of that.
No.
There's no mention of it. It's not like she dies or anything. She's absolutely fine at the end of the episode. She's laughing with them. We just won't see her again. So no. I'm sure that'll be explained away when we get to Terror of the Autons next.
Yeah.
But
Big Finish exists. I've been listening to some Big Finish with her in, and I'm very happy.
Very good. In terms of the last episode, it kind of solidifies everything Liz was, really. It doesn't develop the character much, but...
No, it feels like it's too much of a sudden end for the character. We haven't had enough time with her because I feel like she could be amazing.
Yeah, I think she's been good, but you can... It's a little bit of a shame that there hasn't been more time because it feels like a bit of unfinished business or a bit of lost potential because there's definitely more that could have been done with her. Similar to Zoe, actually.
I'm happy, though, which her last episode, we had her being a scientist rather than just a tea lady, which we saw hints of in... I've forgotten which one it was. The second one from this season.
Silurians.
Silurians, yeah.
Yeah, Doctor and the Silurians. Yeah. It was good that they seemed to just consolidate what was strong about Liz in this episode. Yeah. Everything felt like that's the character. It's not going to change now. She's knowledgeable. She's equal parts caring, equal parts brave. She's a very good character that feels fleshed out. And probably the strongest female companion we've had since Barbara right at the start.
Yeah.
And could have been stronger, maybe, if we got a bit more time with her.
Yeah, it's just a shame she left.
Yes. We're not saying goodbye to Lethbridge Stewart, though, are we?
Should we quickly talk about her duplicate?
I feel like once we get to Lethbridge Stewart, we talk about both duplicates, because that feels like its own universe to talk about.
Cool. That
feels like we can talk about it in its entirely own way. Lethbridge Stewart is... man. He's just good to watch all the time. Yeah. And I love the way that as almost they've worked together more, the Doctor and Lethbridge Stewart have become more irritated by each other.
Yes.
It's like they're realising that ideologically they're just so far apart, and that's a bridge they can never cross quite fully. They're too stubborn for each other.
Opposites attract, and they're still really good friends about it.
Yes, even when they insult each other, which they do quite a lot.
Now, there is actually something which I wanted to say about the Doctor and Lethbridge, their scene. Sorry if you can hear any barking behind me. I've
Yeah,
got
I
the
can
window
hear
open
that.
because it's very hot at the moment when we
Yeah,
record this.
recording in heatwave.
In fact,
Fitting, isn't it?
when the doctor has got the photo trying to find Lethbridge Stewart's face, I don't know if this is an intentional callback or not, but I'd like to think it is in my headcanon. It's a callback to when the doctor couldn't rebuild Jamie's face because he couldn't remember what it looked like.
I think it's a reach. I'll
I know
give
it's
you
a
that.
reach, but that thinking that's a callback makes me happy.
See, I like to think of that as just a joke that all soldiers look quite similar at that time.
That also does work.
I think
Should we
I'm
say
happy
both?
with. Yeah, I think it's both. Jokes can be multifunctional. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I think the best thing about Alistair, and I think has always been, is Nicholas Courtney has this way about him that's just eminently compelling.
Yeah.
You love watching what he'll do next. He's always kind of divided between that kind of that military conditioning that he knows because that's what he's been brought up on, and he's been a brigadier and he's been a corporal all this time. That's the world he knows, but him loosening up to the fact that he now knows there's plenty more than meets the eye on Earth, and he's got to deal with the Doctor and Liz all the time. So he's torn between those two sides of him, and so it's nice to see the interplay between that. And I think people don't give Courtney a lot of credit for how well he acts that. Like, he does so much without doing much at all.
Yeah.
That it's always watchable and always keeps you coming back. I've really liked this team actually the whole way through. Even when the episodes haven't been fantastic, they've always been solid.
Cool. So shall we look at our duplicates?
Yeah. And I mean, we could even start talking about the story here in a way, because the main, or like, I suppose, here comes a pun for you. The core, yeah, in the Earth, got to get to the core, of the story is that after episode 2, the Doctor's doing one of these TARDIS trials. The nuclear power, for a couple of reasons, ratchets up and sends the TARDIS off into the ether. And when the TARDIS comes back, the Doctor is back in his office, apart from the fact he is in an entirely parallel world, which is the first time we've really seen a parallel world on Who.
Yeah.
Obviously, parallel worlds get brought back up later on. RTD fans will, of course, know about Bad Wolf Bay, and Journey's End, of course, talks about all the parallel dimensions and things. And if we ever had Rose Tyler Earth Defense, we could have had the entire series in a parallel world. So we're not strangers to it. But this was uncharted territory for Who when this got done.
Yeah, and I think it's the best part about this episode is when we're dealing with the alternative universe with the different dynamics of how we expect for Liz to be, how we expect the Brig to be. It just isn't. It's just changed it up, and it's quite fun to see our characters play evil.
Yes, I think you could tell how much fun they were having as well. I think that's what made that section of the story. I say section, it's about half the story we spend in the parallel world, to be honest. Where you've got Brigadier has no moustache and an eye patch. And Liz is basically a hardened security woman who has no aspirations to be a scientist. Yes, section leader. And Alistair is brigade leader. What's
leader.
Benton again? Squadron underleader or something ridiculous.
No. Try again.
Section underleader.
Try again.
He's underleader something.
That's definitely wrong.
It's something underleader. I know it's something underleader. I remember. Is it division underleader?
Nope.
Regiment underleader?
Nope.
I've already said it. You're just trick questioning me.
You haven't actually said
What
it.
the hell is it then?
One more guess.
Boys underleader?
No. This isn't Scouts.
Brownies underleader.
Platoon underleader.
It's platoon.
Platoon underleader.
Are you kidding me?
I thought you would guess it.
Well, it's just how many military words do you just have off the top of your head? It was like being a thesaurus. Yeah. Platoon underleader. Benton is an underrated character this season, by the way. We see quite a lot of Benton. And duplicate Benton is just as good.
Yeah. I
although
enjoy being with
obviously
him.
way more satanic. I mean, the only real difference in this parallel world that I can work out is there's this very offhand comment that actually means quite a lot, that the royal family was executed during the Second World War, and they've been living in a republic for however many years. And there's like a lot of Big Brother style posters around, and
This is why we shouldn't abolish monarchy.
yes, because dictatorship will prevail, because effectively the republic runs on the principle that people are essentially slaves, and if they don't do their jobs well, they can be disappeared or dispatched of. Apart from that, it's just sort of subtle differences. You get, I think the best difference has to be sort of evil Brig,
Yeah.
because Brig is both evil, way more dictatorial, and yet way more cowardly all at
Yeah,
once, and it's fantastic.
it really does just show, isn't it? It's like when you have that. It literally happens when you have that bad manager who doesn't quite accept which you're going as fast as you can to go,
Mm.
but still they're stood there going, "Go faster! You need to go faster." Why is this taking so long, James? Why are we still doing this, James? Why is this episode taking so long? It's like we're already 20 minutes in. We need to speed this up.
Okay, so when we talk about Luffy shit, blah, 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 then we move on to the shot. No. Yeah, I think the thing I really like about that is Courtney got so much chance to have fun with it and be maniacal, and then
Yes.
when things, because I think it's safe to say that things go all tits up in the parallel world with the drilling, and essentially without confirming it or showing it, that world absolutely comes to an end.
Yep.
Like full apocalypse oblivion stuff, and they all die, but it's fine.
Shall I tell you what this reminds me of? And it's such an obscure thing. I don't know you actually know it exists.
Thought you were just going to mention the fact that several trillion people die in flux and then are brought back with no explanation.
No, it's something even better, which I have now lost. So give me 1 second, because I have done some research on this. So it reminds me of an old cartoon I watched as a child.
the infamous cartoon that blew the world up.
Yes, it was a kids' cartoon called Dog Star. Do you know about
Dog
this
Star?
cartoon?
No.
So it was an Australian animated TV show.
Oh, that explains it. Yeah, everything will be upside down, won't it?
It was on CBBC. It must have been on CBBC because that's all I had access to. But it was from 2006, 2011. It was essentially this is the concept of this story, and it's amazing. Earth dies. Earth is too polluted and just dies. So all of Earth fly off to New Earth. All of the
Right.
dogs get sent off in a separate spaceship. But
Does it miss?
an evil millionaire messes with a computer and loses for dogs. So everyone has to buy his robo dogs.
And so what happens to the normal dogs?
The whole thing is the entire point of the show is a bunch of kids going out to try to save the dogs.
All right, cool. That's fine. I didn't want the dogs to die. That'd be too much.
No, but in the final episode of the first season, this is what it reminded me of. So the entire plot, I don't know how I remember this. I don't remember anything else from this TV show aside from this plot point.
But this is a vivid memory.
Yes. The evil guy who made the robo dogs is drilling to the center of the Earth, which then destroys New Earth, or is about to destroy New Earth.
Ah, we found your influences now, Dogstar.
Yeah.
Is there a parallel world that shows up in Dogstar by any chance? Or did they think that was a bit too much for the kids?
We're going back to 2007 when that episode aired. I've got no clue.
Yeah, parallel worlds were all the rage back then. That's fine.
Like 15 years ago?
That's
God knows
bizarre.
how
Bizarre
I
you remember that. Although, to be fair, I remember bizarre bits of kids' shows from back then.
I can't believe you never watched Dogstar.
No, I never watched Dogstar. I was
You're missing out.
I wasn't in Britain at the time, which is probably the best explanation for why I haven't watched CBBC programming.
No excuse, it's Australian.
Okay, it was an import. Whatever. Where did you watch it? No. I'll tell you right now. I'll tell you what I was growing up on. Okay, H2O. Just add water. What a program!
Yes.
What?
Did you know they did a sequel to that?
Yes, I've seen the sequence. It's rubbish. Of course, I watched it. Like, you can't tell me you can't be curious about an H2O sequel, folks. I look. I know this is a tangent. This might not even make the edit. But if you have,
Why are we going into our guilty secret TV shows?
no, it's fine. We'll get off it in a minute. But if you've not seen H2O, Just Add Water. I think it may be still on Netflix in the UK somewhere. Please go and watch it. And when you do, get a copious amount of alcohol. No drinking rules. Just drink. You will love this program. There are 3 series of it to get into, each more absurd than the last, and you will love each moment of it. And then when you're done with that, go watch the originals, because they basically all turn up on that show for some reason.
Yes. Isn't that show also Australian?
Yes, it is, actually. What are the Australians doing? It's Australian. Because it's all like, Clio, don't go in the water. Yeah, when we're done with this podcast in however many years it will take, H2O every episode from the beginning. so no, we're going to get this back on track. This battle track. I've got a segue. We're going to get this back on track with a neat segue. From water to fire, Inferno. Oh man. So Parallel World is fun. It's a great idea. But my feeling is, and I wonder whether you agree with me on it.
Oh my god, fuck me. Oh, right. I can save this.
I've just been saving it. What are you going in?
So Parallel World where Earths get destroyed. What do we think about this?
I think it's a great idea on paper. The problem is, do you know why I'm laughing? It's because I know you left a gap, because I know you want to edit it out, but I'm telling you, you're not going to edit it out. Right, hold on. Let me refresh. So yeah, the thing with the Parallel World is that it's a great idea on paper. Because obviously you get to explore these duplicate characters, everyone gets to have fun. It's a bit like Enemy of the World, isn't it? When Troutman gets to play Salamander and has a bit of fun with that character. The issues, I think there's 2 main issues with how they do it. That means, in the end, for me, it doesn't quite work as it should. 1, the Parallel World doesn't really have an internal logic that I can understand.
Mm-hmm.
I think the best parallel universes usually have a point of divergence from the main universe. I'm trying to think of a good example of this. In the narrative, it just sort of seems that things happen differently because they do, and it would be fun, which is fine. Like, it creates good scenarios.
I think it makes sense. I think things do happen how they should do. Aside from we taking the element of they're all evil.
Yeah, I think the other thing is there's no real explanation of why the parallel universe is running behind in time, because that seems to be what the thing is. The parallel universe is ahead of the real one.
Yeah.
And there doesn't really seem to be an explanation of that. It just kind of is because it could be. There's nothing wrong with it. I just think it lessens the experience of them building the world out and fleshing it out properly, because I think you could have done it in a more proper way. The second problem, I think, is more fundamental, which is the fact that I think the best way to do a parallel world story, especially when the parallel world is so linked with what's happening in the real world, is to intercut between them.
They did a bit.
They do a bit.
I think.
But it doesn't happen nearly enough.
I think that honestly, I'm happy with that, because I think the Prime Universe, this bit, is the worst element of this story.
Okay.
2, I imagine it's most likely a technical limitation of the fact which they do all of this in studio recording, so it's harder to switch between the 2.
The thing is, if you're recording it live, that creates an issue. Certainly, in the modern world of television making, you could do it quite easily, but certainly in the 70s it was harder. What I think the problem it creates, though, is that you don't get to see like the domino effect too much about where the divergences are. And so it feels like, because we spend maybe episodes 3 and 4 almost wholly, like with maybe one intercut in the parallel timeline. And I think the issue with that is you kind of lose track of the story that you were on. It does feel like the entire story just completely goes in a different direction with no real warning, and you forget where you were.
I think it does. I think everything which happens makes sense with the rules they made.
Because when the Doctor gets back, right? When the Doctor gets back, he sort of treats it like he had a dream, effectively. That's the effect it has. It doesn't. Nothing that happens in the parallel universe really directly affects the real one. The only thing that really affects is the fact the Doctor was there and learned something from it, which he probably could have learned in the real universe. So you have to then justify, well, was the parallel universe really justified?
I think they're more justified than for bizarre monster things.
I agree with that, because the monster things don't do anything at all, which is another discussion we'll have.
I think it works, and I think where it does divert, it diverts with some element of logic. Like, for major elements, which I think of where it does divert, is the fact which guy whose name I've forgotten, Keith
Gold. So Keith Gold.
Keith Gold survives in the Prime universe, while he dies in the not Prime universe. But I think that makes sense within the universes, because
I can give you that.
For Showman to order the death of him in the Prime universe would be a lot less believable than it is.
Yeah, in the parallel, slightly extreme Republican universe.
And that's the only real area where I can see it majorly diverts. Aside from the fact the Doctor is existing one of them and not in the other.
In a way, it's kind of a catch-22, because the less you divert, the more you question why it's there. But then again, the more you divert, you kind of get confused between the two. So it is a bit of a catch-22 play with the parallel world, and it's difficult to find that balance.
I think they hit it, because yes, they're similar, but also way which they're not makes sense.
I can go with that. I think, but even if you go through justification, I don't think it paces well, and it does lead to you losing track of which story is really followable. At least for me,
I think the pacing issues come mostly down to the bizarre werewolf things.
Tell you what, should we talk about the werewolf things? Because that's where the real problem is. I think the parallel universe you can view either way.
Yeah.
Because and I should say, it is a really good idea on paper, and I liked that they went for it and they kind of committed to it, and I thought all the characters in there were really good.
Yeah.
If we get back to the Prime universe, though, and all this werewolf monster stuff, it does just seem like they wanted something to put the kids behind the sofa, really, and they didn't think too much about where it would fit in the story.
What it feels like is the writers served to the BBC like a 4-part story. The exceptions went, right, we need this to be longer, and we need to have some more increased threat. And the writers went away and wrote the werewolves.
Tell you what,
that's what it feels like.
I reckon there's a story about drilling into the Earth's core and fire coming out, and there's a story about werewolves and green goo that was existing in the writer's room, and then someone went, well, we can only do one of these. And then they had the clever idea, well, I guess we could just do both and throw them in.
Yeah, because I feel like even without the werewolf things, there's a lot of threat going on here, and a lot of element of
Look, it's
stakes.
Apocalyptic level threat. I think we're good on stakes. Because, I mean, if you look back at the parallel universe, the last thing we see of that is molten lava of incredible heat, killing and massacring the world, which will inevitably end and be consumed by this fire. Isn't that enough? Because at that point, what's the point of the werewolves? Can they survive the lava and hunt? But then they're not exactly hunting down the survivors, because no one's going to survive that.
The entire issue for me with them is that they have no point in this universe.
Yeah, because as it were, there's kind of a goo that's not explained that sort of comes out from that part of the crust. It's very loose. they get the goo on them and it sort of infects them, and there's a process and they become these werewolf hairy things that are incredibly hot.
And it's quite safe to say which this process is very variable depending on whether the plot allows it.
Yes, yes, for some it happens within 30 seconds. For Starman, it takes about 90% of the episode to complete.
Yeah, like they have the explanation at the end about what happens in Temptation is because it's hot, which I accept. But it's the difference between the initial technician who essentially transforms in around 5 minutes.
Yeah, pretty much there and then, Slocum, who then goes on his killing maneuver.
Yeah. But then we then compare it to Starman, as you say. He gets infected in like episode 2, and he only really turns episode 7.
Yeah, he gets to have about like 12 "ooh, I feel dizzy" moments before anything happens.
Yeah. It's very weird. It doesn't make
Yeah,
much
it doesn't.
sense.
It just doesn't fit the story logically. And if you take your suggestion, let's say, and we do it into a 4-part story, and we take the werewolves out, there's a really good episode there, because you could do it a bit like the Ark in a way, where they had the crossover between 2 timelines, or at least 2 parts of the same timeline. You could cross between the parallel world and the real world in that story, and have the division between them. You draw in comparison between the 2, and then the solutions in one affect the solutions of the other. And that's a really interesting story, and one that's a bit more fast paced as well, and feels like it's keeping you going the whole way, because I think there's not enough story really to fill Inferno up. It is a 7-parter. It is a bit of a slog.
It suffers from the same problem which we always say: 4 parts of best. Anything longer than that, you need
Longer than that, you need a
justification.
really good story. I mean, the War Games even has bloat.
Yeah,
That's an excellent story, but that has bloat as well. A 7-parter that isn't particularly good feels long. 3 hours of a story that isn't fantastic is long, and you can only solve that by creating an engaging story that keeps you entertained all the way through, with tension and plot and all those little tricks.
yeah.
Should we talk about some of the side characters we meet, because there's quite a few I think are worth mentioning that are good company throughout this episode, and they have duplicates as well, so 2 for the price of 1. For example, Mr. Sutton is a good little character. The driller expert who's been brought in. Greg Sutton, yes.
Should I just
He gets a whole story to himself in a lot of ways, really. He comes in, he takes a liking to Starman's personal assistant, Petra, and that's kind of an on and offy will they, won't they throughout the story. It's a nice subplot. Keeps it going. Greg has quite a mouth on him, which is good to watch. He's he's sort of like a Cockney guy, isn't he? Like working class. And
Greg is the most, how do I phrase this? Greg is the most similar in both the Prime universe and the parallel universe.
Yeah, effectively the same character.
Yeah.
I suppose that's because if you're taking the idea that Sutton comes in as an external person in both timelines, he's been in it the least.
Yeah.
So I suppose he's had less influencing him. So it makes sense that he wouldn't have changed as much. But I just really enjoyed watching him kind of go off. He's the person who's concerned about safety, concerned about doing it in the right way, and has no problem letting anybody know that, regardless of superiority. He, along with, pretty much every character in the story, absolutely lays into Starman, which is the highlight of this whole thing. You feel like the scriptwriters had so much fun coming up with 70s style pithy remarks to put him down.
Yeah, but let's be honest, he completely deserves.
Starman is... I think he's another issue with this episode, but Starman is like the most blinkered character you've ever seen.
I remember discussing about this similar sort of thing in another episode. It's this mentality of, I have been thinking about this thing for X amount of time, so I cannot be wrong.
Yeah, that's the only justification. Starman just decides at the start of this episode that anything he does is right, and anything anyone else can possibly think of cannot therefore be right because he didn't think of it. And that's the entire justification for him.
And there's no justification about why he's doing it right, other than that he's been looking into this thing for 5 years. That's
he's just like, I've done it. It's it's a shame, really, because I think that character becomes so like frustratingly one note because you know exactly what he'll do at all the time. It's just constantly got the blinkers up, got the shields up. Nothing's getting through. Any attempt at reason will fail. He is just one
It's
note. I'm the man.
it's the same in both universes as well. I can't even work out which one's worse, but they're both fucking annoying.
I mean, the Republican universe Starman seems a lot more killy.
Yeah, I
Although
guess.
realistically, I don't think Prime Universe Starman would oppose it.
Mm.
Just a weapons grade asshole, to be honest. Um, it does it work in the story? Yes, because you need that antagonistic character to set things off. But in a way, we've seen that before. You know, we've seen plenty of Doctor Who stories where they arrive at a facility and the boss doesn't want to play ball. That's a pretty long trodden
That's
character
essentially
trait you've had.
more than half of Troughton stories.
Yeah, that's the entire Troughton era. I mean, in some ways, this Pertwee story felt like a bit of a throwback.
Mm.
In some ways, to some of the older stories where it was a little bit more out there. Doctor was a bit darker. It was a bit more based under siege. Yeah, it's a shame, really, because I'd also feel like the production values of this all kind of went backwards. Like when you compare it to Spearhead from Space, which felt really budgeted and like they'd really gone for it, this felt like we might have invested a bit too much in Spearhead in Space, lads. What can you cobble together on £5?
Yeah, it's an interesting episode, and we've also got Keith Gold.
Keith Gold, yeah, bit just kind of aristocratic, bumbly, nice-ish fella.
Can I just say, if I imagine Mark Gatiss playing any classic Who character,
Yeah, that's a
Keith
hell of a
Gold.
shout. Mark Gatiss is Keith Gold. I think it is Mark Gatiss's direct forebear.
Yeah,
is playing him. It's very Mycroft.
As soon as I saw him, I thought, Mark Gatiss.
You know, he has that kind of, oh, well, I shall raise it with the minister voice.
Yes.
It's all very, tough. Isn't it? It's yeah. I bought a book recently about the BBC history, and there was like a tough character in that that was very like he sort of got mad because apparently he'd been told that some people had been lying to him about something. He went, well, they can't have. They went to school with me, as if that was the only justification. Like, that's exactly what that is. It's proper tough, but he's a nice character. He gets a whole car crash scene. Yeah, all right, good company.
Which I have to say is potentially one of the best twists I've actually seen in Doctor Who, because I fully thought he died.
Yeah. The fact he comes back in just with his arm and thing, say, "Oh yeah, it was a crash. It wasn't great," but it's because it's obviously set up in that parallel universe that Keith dies in a car crash. You think, "Oh God, this is it. It's history repeating itself. They're not gonna make the changes that they need to in the Prime universe to solve the problem." But yeah, and then I think the last one's Petra, who gets quite an arc in this episode. Actually starts out as being sort of a bit blind because she's been Starman's personal assistant for quite some time, it seems, but slowly comes to realise that her boss may be slightly insane.
Yeah, she is one of the things where I partly agree with you about the consistency between the parallel universes don't 100% make sense, because in one she's her PA, his PA, and the other one she's a doctor. I don't
it's just kind of like,
that
okay.
changed. All the other ones I can kind of understand, of Liz, of section leader Liz Shaw in a militaristic world going, okay, I've joined the military, that's what the country wants me to do. I can justify that in my head.
Yeah, I can. It's tricky because you can see some and you can't see others. Like, I mean, with every parallel world, you're taking a leap, aren't you? You're taking a suspension of disbelief in. But it shouldn't be about, and this is me going on another rightly thing, it shouldn't be about whether the idea is cool completely. Yes, the idea should be cool. You should think, when you're creating a parallel world, what would be the interesting changes that would create conflict, or that would create drama, or create good scenes, and create a good story. But you do have to, especially if you're comparing it with the real world or another world in your story, you have to justify why those things are different and what that's saying about your story. Because if you don't, it just feels like you're doing it because it's cool, and it doesn't add up to the whole. And I think that's why I think it's a waste of potential episode, because not everything they try adds up to the whole, and I don't quite know why they put the parallel universe in, like what the precise thematic reason was for the writers to do it, and that leaves the episode feeling a little bit emptier than it should.
Yeah, but her character was good though. Our time with her, I can see they were obviously the same character between the two parallel worlds.
Yeah, very similar again.
Job role, but it was good to have her be in a more assertive role in the parallel universe.
Yeah, I mean that sequence that she's trying to get the power through, like right at the end before it all goes completely to shit, is great actually. And Lethbridge Stewart being cowardly and trying to force him to take him and getting shot up, it's great. It's really interesting to see characters that you know flipped up and gets put in different situations. It's good fun.
So, shall we talk about the ending to bring this podcast to a close?
I think so. Yeah, episode 7 kind of just wraps up what we knew. The Doctor re-emerges from the parallel world. He's managed to get himself out by hooking up the TARDIS back to the nuclear reactor in the parallel timeline. While that world has absolutely blown up and the characters have been rogue wand. And then he goes in, beats the ever-loving shit out of a reactor.
Yeah.
And Stallman turns into a werewolf finally. They have a bit of a fight and then it's all fine.
Yeah. The ending makes sense. I've got no real issue with the ending. It
resolves everything.
It resolves. It's
solid enough. The ending joke where he tries to leave and ends up in a rubbish tip is funny.
Yes.
And it kind of feels like the perfect ending to that series, actually, because it sort of wraps up the idea that, he does want to go, but he understands that he still can't, and he's got to learn to live with that. And
I do love the fact his last words to Brig is just purely insulting him. He goes, bye! And then he comes back and goes, Brig, please help. Please.
Yeah, can you hand me some people? What I said was hasty. Yes, it's good because I think obviously one of the great things about, let's say, New Who is the whole idea that the Doctor is running away from his problems. That's one of the things I like about that character, and I think why the ending works for me is that it's all about the fact that in this occasion he can't run away from his problems.
Yeah, he wants to.
He has to accept the consequences of the things he does.
Yeah.
And he's just going to have to learn to live with that. And that's going to be true when we get to season 8 soon.
Ooh.
Staying on Earth, staying with Unit, getting used to this new old Who, which has been good fun so far.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. So, obviously, spoilers ahead. James, what do you give this out of 10?
I'm going to give this a 5.
Okay.
Just going to throw it in the middle, because I do like a lot of the parts of it, but while the ideas are good, they don't fully get executed. It's good fun, but a bit long. There are issues, there are positives. So I think down the middle is fair.
So I'm going to give it a 6. But I also want to say something else. I was initially going to give this story higher.
But what happened?
I had to rewatch it because I watched it like 2 weeks ago initially. So I had to rewatch it again. And on the rewatch, I got very bored very quickly. So I'm going to knock it down a point to 6.
It is bloated. I think towards the middle, there's probably too much. There's just too much space and not enough great story to fill it. But we've said that so many times about these 7-part stories. They do feel a bit over bloated, and like maybe there's 4 or 5 good episodes in there if you're lucky, but there's always going to be a bit of excess fat that they could have trimmed.
Yeah, and I don't think the bizarre werewolf things help.
No, they don't do anything. I think that's the big issue with this. If you take those out, you've got a pretty solid story here, but the werewolves sort of confuse and add to the melting pot. And yeah, they just didn't need to be in there.
Yeah.
Final question then before we wrap this up.
Yep.
Mustache and no eye patch, or eye patch and no mustache?
Mustache, and I think this is slightly insulting Nicholas Courtney because at the time, if you remember, he only put on the mustache to up-age himself. It was a fake mustache, so we essentially spent the entire episode just dissing Nicholas Courtney.
So, Nicholas, always mask your actual face. So we love you, but you want to hide that. You want to hide that upper part.
And with that, goodbye.
Yes. Well, before we say goodbye, what should people do if they want to listen to more of these? If they enjoyed this, Owen,
People enjoy this sort of thing.
Hypothetically, someone could.
I mean, if you did, I'd suggest you maybe subscribe, give us a review, maybe a star rating if your platform allows it. Share it with your friends. That's what I would do hypothetically.
Yeah, that's the hypothetical one. And then all right, hypothetically, say they really really liked it and wanted to say something about the episode, like if Inferno made them feel really really hot or just lukewarm or cold all over. What would they do if they wanted to do that?
If you real reason why I tweet into this is to insult you, so I'll probably if I was going to contact this show to insult you,
Which is fair.
Which I would probably just tweet us, which I'm going to guess our Twitter account is at Black Archive Pod, or maybe
that's a hell of a guess.
I might actually just send you a long form essay about.
Yeah, a nice little hate essay about all the things you dislike about me.
Which I would then probably email to something like blackarchivepod@gmail.com.
Is that blackarchivepod@gmail.com with no caps at all?
Doesn't
no
matter.
Spaces or anything weird?
Doesn't matter. You can't have emails with spaces.
Exactly. It would be weird.
So with that, goodbye, I guess.
Yep. End of season, what happens next? And then season 8 after that. We'll catch you then.
Bye.
Bye.